good morning once again for those who are just attending. We really appreciate you bearing with us for our first virtual meeting. This is our first virtual lunch and learn for North Texas ISSA chapter, our monthly meeting for May the 21st. So let's just jump right into it. Today we have good content from Armor Security as our sponsor, and Michael is here to talk to us about that. But before we get into that detail, let's go over the agenda really quickly. And so we'll follow through with the regular announcements, and the presentation will ensue immediately after that. Right after the presentation, we will hand it over to Terry from Armor, who will talk about some of the career opportunities that Armor has, so you want to stick around for that. Also, there will be prize drawings from Armor and for North Texas, as is North Texas ISSA, as is customary. So that will be an exciting part, and we encourage you to stick around. Anyone who may have any announcements for career opportunities from other partners and companies that are present today. Our 2020 board, this may be the first time, if you haven't visited our website, that you are becoming familiar with these faces. I am Lonnie Harrell. I should have said that in the beginning. Sorry. Lonnie Harrell, the newly elected vice president. These are the other board members here who are supporting us today. I want to thank the board members for putting this together. There has been a lot of work in the background to make sure that we provide something here for our members. You guys deserve it, so we want to make sure that we thank the board members for all that they've done.
And Lonnie, I think you may need to advance the slide.
I'm sorry?
I think you may need to advance the slide. We're not seeing the board member slide.
Oh.
There we go.
That may be a network connection issue. Okay. Sorry about that. Thanks for the feedback there. All right. So, moving on. As I mentioned, Armor Security is going to be our meeting sponsor for today. So, with that, we will get into Armor's presentation shortly after. There are a couple more announcements I want to bring to your attention before we get there, though. We want to welcome, as customary, our new members and guests. Unfortunately, we would be at Maggiano's where we would ask you to raise your hands, but if you just want to put something in chat to make sure that we acknowledge you toward the end of the meeting, thank you for coming. If you have any questions on how to become a member, our next slide shows you just how, by going to www.issa.org or sending an email over to Carrie at members@northtexasissa.org. When you're there, just make sure that along with signing up for the ISSA international or national chapter, that you're also signing up for North Texas chapter as well. There will be a small fee associated with that, and you will be all good. Again, for any other questions, just email us at membership.northtexas.issa.org. Also, we're making strides to make sure that we grow our chapter. You may be proud to know and to come to understand that North Texas is one of the largest ISSA chapters in the nation, and we're really proud of that. And we can't do that without you and your referrals to others. Some of those who are on the board were referred by others within the community. That we have a strong knit community, and we thrive on that. So for anything from building out new engagements, new events, and also for putting things like this on, and for our annual conference at the end of the year. If you're looking for a job, make sure that you visit our LinkedIn page. If you have any jobs for any recruiters we welcome you to add any jobs that you have to post to our LinkedIn group. This is a big service to our members, and we'd like to drive more traffic to that LinkedIn site, so that way, when we do have these meetings and when we start to meet again physically, then we can put names to faces and have conversations. Upcoming events. Sean, are you seeing the slides progress better now?
Yes, it's all synced. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, upcoming events. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that our special interest groups are really excited about speaking events and some of the other engagements that we have when our community and partners come to us asking for involvement. And so we want to extend that on to our membership and participants today. So we, especially from our college special interest group, Alina White leads this as our director. And the message here that we want to convey is to look out for an invitation email that we have for our chapter's speaker directory. That speaker directory will be created for potential speakers for various engagements, like student club engagements at universities, community engagements as well, and also for meetings and engagements with school-age students to make cybersecurity a forefront in their minds for career aspects as well. And we believe that you can be really impactful there. So we're really excited about that. We have a number of partnerships, not only with universities and local schools, but also outreach programs that happen to meet at e-gaming stadiums that make it really exciting for the youth of all different ages. And our meeting survey. We want to make sure that that we point you to this. A lot of our veteran members are really familiar with this, but just make sure that you navigate to NTXISSA.org for the survey. I do want to remind you or to let you know that because this is a virtual event, that we do not have actual tickets. So please omit that. You do not have to put in a ticket for a ticket ID to enter this month's drawing. We are taking your attendance today and your registration and compiling that in a randomized order for the drawings for the end of the meeting. But we also want your feedback. So that feedback helps us to make these meetings better. All right, member announcements. This goes along with some of the announcements that we have for jobs and career opportunities. If you have any of those, feel free to post those in the Q&A. We do have North Texas members who are monitoring the Q&A, and we can bring those up again at the end of the session in our networking session, and we'll allow you to speak and present your your job opportunities and member announcements at that point. All right. So with that, Michael Mays, I will hand the ball over to you if you don't mind doing introductions to you and your company and Terry. I'm sorry, Terry, I'm handing it over to you.
Yeah, I'll take it from here. Thank you. And Mike, you can transition and go ahead and get your slides ready to share. And I will just tell everybody a little bit about Armor. Armor is a global cybersecurity software company that simplifies protecting data and applications in private, public, or hybrid cloud environments. Armor Anywhere provides technology to detect and respond to threats and can be activated in minutes. Armor also helps organizations comply with major regulatory frameworks and controls. We combine workload protection, analytics from cloud-native sources, and other security data to provide unparalleled insight into threats facing organizations. Our cybersecurity experts actually monitor the customer environments 24/7, 365, and if an attack takes place, we help customers respond quickly and effectively. Armor protects over 1,000 customers in over 40 countries. And of course, you can always learn more by going to armor.com, or you can follow on Twitter at Armor. And that kind of gives you in a nutshell who Armor is. And with this, I'm going to hand it over to Mike, who's going to present the presentation for you guys today.
Okay, great. Can everyone see that all right? And thank you so much. I'm really honored to be speaking to security professionals in North Texas. I'm really grateful to be part of this community and seeing what everyone is doing these days. So thank you again for joining me. I want to talk to you today about black markets, about the dark web. And I know many of you are certainly familiar with it. I don't know how many of you may have visited some of these corners, but we'll talk a little bit about that business today. A little bit about me. I'm a research specialist with Armor. I work with the media relations team, but my career has primarily been in technology communications and healthcare, mobile computing, cryptocurrency, and cybersecurity. But for a number of years, what I've been really excited about, frankly, is the activity on digital black markets. And in the last year, I have been researching some of the ransomware attacks in the United States. But so today what I want to do is give you an update on where these markets are on the dark web, where the dark net markets are today, talk a little bit about cybersecurity as a service, which is growing, and then we'll talk a little bit about COVID-19 and the pandemic and what we've seen on these marketplaces, both in terms of supplies, drugs, and even malware. And then at the end, hopefully we'll take a few of your questions. Now, the business of the dark web is growing. A recent May 19th actual report by Bitfury showed that darknet market transfers are up 340% over the last 3 years. And so this market is growing. And I want to talk first a little bit about some context about these markets. Because certainly everyone here, I'm sure, we know about the surface web. It's what we can, most of us can access through Google. The deep web, billions more sites, of course, anything behind a firewall that needs a password. The dark web is a small subset, of course, and it's probably smaller than you might think. Recorded Future crawled 260,000 onion pages, about the size of the reachable Tor network, and they found 55,000, almost 56,000 onion domains. But even within those, they only found 8,000 that were active sites. And as you drill down to darknet markets that we're talking about today, there's really only a few hundred of those. And that's irrespective of, say, the really small marketplaces, the tiny marketplaces that could be created in other languages and in other countries. And when you think about these kinds of sites, when we think about the availability of the sites we know on the service web, many of these sites have uptimes of really even 60, 65%. But why is black market threat intelligence important? Really, why is threat intelligence important? In understanding your adversaries' tools and techniques can help you to better defend yourself. And more information, of course, means that you can make better risk decisions. And ultimately, threat intelligence provides context around many of the security controls that you may implement. But why threat intelligence on these marketplaces? Well, frankly, threat researchers who are looking at these marketplaces may be able to spot exploits, 0 days, other vulnerabilities that are for sale on these marketplaces, even before software companies are able to patch them. Threat researchers may also find on these marketplaces and organizations data for sale. In some of these large data dumps, we may find intellectual property that's for sale. And also on these darknet markets, I think it's important to understand cryptocurrency and the role that it plays and the impact that it's beginning to have on larger markets. And then just ultimately information on what's happening on these marketplaces, like in the instance of the COVID-19 pandemic, we can see some things that are happening in real time. Now, I'll have to say that I believe that the anonymous marketplaces are one of the most significant developments in the history of e-commerce, perhaps even of economics, and certainly in the impact it has on cybercrime. Now, the first marketplace really was around in 2006. Something called Adam Flowers, which later became the Farmers Market, was really one of the first. It really was shut down because it used payment systems like PayPal and Western Union. But the modern marketplace that we see today was created in 2011 with the Silk Road. You know, in fact, the creator Ross Ulbricht attended UTD for a while. But these marketplaces, they've created a trustless environment using PGP messaging and Bitcoin and an escrow service to broker deals between anonymous buyers and sellers. It's more of an eBay than, say, an Amazon, these kinds of things. But it's interesting that the vendors that are on these marketplaces are invested. You know, they have to put $500 in escrow just to create an account, so they're not likely to stiff someone on, say, a $200 order. One of the most popular ones today, one of the most popular marketplaces, Empire Market, just recently announced that they have 1 million users. And of course, on these marketplaces, you'll find things like drugs get a lot of play. We won't talk about that a lot here, but you also find hacker exploits, you find infected servers and other things. And of course, we'll talk a little bit more in detail about what we're seeing during the COVID-19 pandemic, because we've seen drugs, we've seen supplies, we've seen testing kits. But we would be remiss to talk about these marketplaces at all if we didn't talk about the role of cryptocurrency. Now, a University of Sydney study about a year or so ago found that 46% of Bitcoin transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain network, about $76 billion, is involved in cybercrime. But that number is declining, really, since institutional investors and more token projects are launched. But I think it's important for businesses and organizations to understand these markets and what they're doing, because they have a large impact on cybercrime, and they also have a large impact now on our economy. As of today, there are 5,493 different token projects. That's 5,000 plus more tokens than Bitcoin. And some of these cryptocurrencies have better anonymity features. Monero, Dash, they are growing in their use on black markets. In fact, there are also 22,000 exchanges for these. So it's an important market, I think, for organizations to understand. It may be even something that organizations look to hedge against ransomware and to take some of that into their holdings. But you know, if you're not familiar with what cryptocurrency is and what it does, and understanding how it's different from other payment systems, I would encourage you to do that. You know, it hasn't been hacked. There was a story this week, $18 million in crypto was stolen from a Swiss exchange called Likey. They exposed their users' private keys. And if you're not really sure still whether this cryptocurrency is a thing, the Archer supercomputer in the UK has been used to mine cryptocurrency. So it's important, I think, for people to understand this and how it might impact their business. Now, obviously, what we see on these marketplaces is the sale of digital goods. VMware said their Carbon Black group just this week announced a 238% surge in cyber attacks on banks. You know, we see this kind of data for sale as commodities. The FULS data, a package of a person's date of birth, their social security, credit cards, even their mother's name. These are packaged up as commodities and sold. So many new victims with all of the breaches that we've seen. I think it's interesting too that there's the evolution of auto carding features on many of these dark market shops, which is, it allows the purchasers of the stolen credit card data to check the balance for a small fee as they're checking out. And if they need to go back to the vendor for fresher cards, they can do that. So there's a whole ecosystem that is created around the sale of digital goods and their use by cyber criminals that I think is important. Now, while drugs, as I said, get a lot of press on these marketplaces, I think one of that doesn't get enough are the sale of exploits, infected servers, botnets, those kinds of things. Tech Republic had a story this week in which they said there is a 62% increase in darknet market sales of, quote, access for sale kinds of products. So, I confirm a lot of that is happening. We're seeing that compromised public cloud servers for AWS or private cloud servers as well. To give you an idea, Emotet, which is a malware Trojan whose aim was originally just to steal credentials, has been updated and reconfigured, and now it's sold primarily as a loader, so it can deposit payloads such as ransomware. You can purchase Emotet on these marketplaces for about $50, but really you can also, many of these kinds of exploits and things are traded within the forums. Of course, the credit card data, anything to commit card not present fraud is active on these marketplaces. Some of these offers are really just scams to steal money from new visitors, but you do see a lot of legitimate offers, and you see individuals who are advertising their services. I think what's really interesting right now is with hundreds of billions of dollars in small business loans that are out there, we've already seen fraud and attackers who are taking from some of the unemployment rolls, other kinds of things. But on these marketplaces, you can see shell corporation papers, EINs, anything that you would need to apply for one of those small business loans. Now, cybercrime as a service is something that has been growing. Now, cybercrime as a service is really an effort by organized groups to somewhat spread the risk of their attacks. And what they're primarily doing is even recruiting others in these models. But they provide affiliate programs with monthly subscriptions. They have very professionally designed websites and customer service models, video tutorials, very well done. They're looking for folks who have some skills, some limited skills, or maybe some access. Maybe they already have some uninfected botnet, but they also provide within these models some just plug and play malware such as ransomware and allow them to conduct their own campaigns. You can certainly, from many of these sites, some of these general sites, but also some sites that are specific to hacker services are available. DDoS attacks are typically used to mask other kinds of things as a diversion, still part of the toolbox. Of course, email spamming, being able to send those emails out, especially now as people are looking for information, you will see that on these sites. But a little bit about ransomware. I mentioned researching ransomware last year. You can check out some of our threat intelligence on our site about that. Ransomware has really begun to hit its stride. We've begun to see a lot of attacks here in Texas. Just before the COVID pandemic stay-at-home orders, the Fort Worth ISD, where my kids go to school, that was attacked in a ransomware attack. Texas Department of Transportation. Of course, we had the Texas 22 back in 2019, but it's begun to evolve. So the group behind Soden, Maze, Doppelpaymer, these folks are exfiltrating data, and they are offering it either on these dark marketplaces or they're offering to post it on the ClearNet. So that is new. The group Soden announced recently that they were going to be asking for Monero from victims. That will, be a challenge for them as they have another step that they will need to take. And you've probably heard in the story of Grubman Shire et al., the law firm of the celebrities that was recently hit with ransomware. The celebrities, their clients include Madonna, Bruce Springsteen, Run DMC, even Facebook. And so the attackers first asked for 21 million in ransom. That has gone up to 42 million in ransom and some threats to expose the US president. So ransomware is something that is not going away. It is proliferating. There are 9 organized groups who are using ransomware to steal data today. And so we really expect these to continue. But on these marketplaces, we see ransomware sold openly. Ransomware as a service, making it easier. Sometimes there's a plug and play API. There may just be offers to just download a ransomware strain, but often with customizable source code, other kinds of things. And so this is a little different than those organized groups. And we see a lot of that on these marketplaces. Now, while the world has been focused on the health and economic impacts posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, we know that cyber criminals have been hard at work. We know that there has been an increase in attacks, and we know that on the marketplaces, we have seen very early the sale of scarce supplies, of medicines, both real and counterfeit, and other kinds of things. You know, the world, CISA and the organization in the UK both released an alert in early April, talking about phishing campaigns that were being very effective that included the World Health Organization. We at Armor were one of the first on these marketplaces to discover chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine for sale 4 days exactly after the US president promoted them from the podium. We have seen testing kits and protective gear since February. I think what's interesting too is on many of these marketplaces, probably as early as February, you began to see them just promoting around the coronavirus. You would find COVID-19 blowout prices on marijuana or on heroin. And most of the marketplaces seem to be particularly bullish on their business, given that so many people are shut in. I think what's also kind of interesting and perhaps alarming on these sites is that you'll find ready-made campaigns and ideas on how to implement social engineering campaigns. Yesterday, I was on a conference with Rick Dean, who's with the Department of Homeland Security, actually with the US Secret Service. And he had said that 80% of what they're seeing in terms of attacks involves some kind of social engineering tool. And you know, now we're part of the most distributed workforce in history, right? Very quickly, we have all moved to a remote situations, and so we know that there are additional vulnerabilities. A recent survey with IDG and CSO magazine showed that an overwhelming majority of IT leaders really feel like this pandemic and our response is going to affect the way they evaluate risk for a number of years now. And many, of course, are having to evaluate their security controls and their policies and processes very quickly. And so we know that these challenges are really going to continue. It's just important for us to continue to be vigilant in the same way we have with the distance that we put between each other. So some key takeaways from a look at these dark net marketplaces. One, certainly that data is being sold. It's financial gain by selling data from these breaches is a big business, and there are millions of new victims to exploit. And more than just the drugs that are for sale on these marketplaces, there are hacker tools and services sold on these marketplaces and in forums. And it's getting easier and easier for script kiddies and for noobs to participate in some ways if they have some limited skills. The COVID-19 pandemic, of course, we're going to continue to see some of the newest things, some new news on these marketplaces, I think, even surrounding these new scarce drugs, including the new remdesivir, which is being now starting to appear on some of these marketplaces. And I hope you'll take this away from my presentation. I'm very passionate about these marketplaces and understanding them, and even cryptocurrency and what they can really mean in terms of threats for your business. Understand that these marketplaces have existed for a decade, and despite them coming down, they continue like a hydra to come back up. And it's part because of the technology, and and many of what is being sold here is fueling a larger cyber criminal enterprise industry. So it's important for us to be constantly vigilant today anyway, right? We are all now in a new paradigm shift, and we're all still just now coming out of these stay-in-place orders. And I hope everyone has survived well, and your families, and I hope everyone's safe. But what are some of the things that we should do now? I think many of the tips that we've provided are still some of the same ones, right? I think most what's important now is to train your employees that they're desperate for information from you. They're desperate for information from their health officials, and they are really subject to phishing attacks. And so make sure that they understand what your communication is around the pandemic. Make sure that you are patching your software as quickly as you can find those issues. Monitor your cloud usage, of course, and least privilege access. Make sure that you frankly, have a great backup system, and that you know that it is up to date, and that you have 3 copies, 2 media, and 1 offsite. Those things are still really important. For those of you, depending on, for people, depending on where your company is in its security or cloud journey, you may have a SOC, or you may be looking to augment your SOC. Just a word about ours. Ours certainly has been there and strong throughout the pandemic. And, these folks, they look for the latest threat intelligence. They pull that together from all sorts of sources. And of course, they are there to provide detection and response in real time as quickly as we can. And we provide, of course, we're providing a lot of the information that we gather from our own customers to develop new countermeasures, to further automate the process that we're doing, and to create our own curated Armor playbooks. Now, we have a number of resources for you. Check out last year's Black Market Report. We have a new one that'll be coming out soon, a little bit different take on these marketplaces, a little bit like I've talked to you today in terms of their size and their impact. And check out also our threat intelligence reports. We put those out on a regular basis. We've talked a lot about ransomware, and we've talked recently about the pandemic. And then check out more information about our SOC and how we might be able to augment your business. But I want to, again, thank you so much, Lonnie. I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have some questions, and look forward to talking with you more.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Actually, I think we're going to hand this over to Terry. I think that you all have some other announcements to make on the career aspect.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add, and Mike, if you could share your screen one more time.
Oh, yeah, sorry. It's
all right. We are hiring, which is great for Armor and for our industry, that we didn't really stop hiring during this time. So I just want to point out, excuse me, if you go to armor.com/careers, excuse me, and you'll see that we have several positions that are open now. The product managers in cloud security actually work with developing our product. And sorry, excuse me, I just got something as soon as Mike was over. And that's the same with the product managers with data analytics. And then, of course, the security operations analyst position is one that works with working with our customers to finding and investigating problems. So you can, again, go to armor.com/careers, and you can see all the positions we have available, as well as some information about our culture. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Terry. Hey, so we'll give Terry a moment, and maybe this is a good time to for any of our members who have already put something into Q&A, or maybe would like to announce any open positions that they have. Sean, can you comb through the Q&A and see if there's anything from recruiters or from colleagues who want to mention the job recs that are open in their organizations?
Sure, Lonnie. There's nothing that I've seen in QA yet, although some are starting to come in. So as those come in, I will answer them, and then they'll show up in the answered section, so you could browse those.
All right. Well, it looks like we're come to our normally this would be our survey part of the meeting, and again, please bear with us. We're learning some new technology here, and then we kind of had to jump through some hoops. But so the good news is that we scheduled a prizing session, a prize drawing session here. Unfortunately, the randomization part of it didn't come through. So what we want to do is we've taken the attendance here. We are up to 125. I think we only had one person dropped, and that's good. But we've taken the attendance. That randomization and prize drawing will happen after we collate all of the participants who attended today, and you will be notified. We will get you the Armor swag packages. I believe Carrie spoke on earlier. Carrie spoke on earlier. If she didn't.
Yeah,
Carrie,
we
do you
actually
want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. We got two different or the same Armor branded swag packages. It's really kind of cool. It includes a wireless Bluetooth speaker, socks, a hand sanitizer, which I know is really important right now, and we're going to throw in a $50 Grubhub gift card, which is great to order food, for the home. So both packages will have the same items in it.
That's awesome. I know that if this were a physical event, that I'd probably have my hands in those bags or asking for one myself. Some of those items are really hard to find. So thank you for that. Also, for the North Texas side, we also want to provide our members an opportunity to understand what the prizes are. So we are looking at Amazon gift cards, and the nominal amount for those will include $50. I'm not sure if all of them will be, but I know that several are, and we have several of those prizes to give. So if you know someone who hadn't attended today, please encourage them to join North Texas as well. We'd love your feedback from the survey. That would be great. And right now, I guess I don't want to end the meeting grossly early. So, Sean, I'll get one more time back to the Q&A, and I think I have a couple more announcements before we move into the networking session.
Hey, Lonnie, there's two questions for Michael at Armor. The first one is, how are you leveraging the information from your dark web research into your SOC services?
Yeah, I just saw that question. Thank you for that question. I think probably some of the easier ways would be, we may see a CVE that is for sale or some new exploit that's for sale, and may integrate that into some of what we're doing. I think it's more of a case of kind of looking at the context of what's happening on these marketplaces, watching what may be sold, or some kinds of techniques in terms of how it really relates to the SOC.
Great. And I see one more question for you, Michael. It says, I am wondering if the update in ransomware changed focus to individual systems instead of corporate penetrations. And do you have any figures regarding that change?
I don't have any at my fingertips in terms of that, but I can tell you anecdotally, the change really in 2019 is towards big game hunting. It's still, a lot of it is still kind of a spray and pray attack. But the attacks are certainly now on larger systems, on MSPs even, which then affect sometimes hundreds of customers. And so they're looking for those who will have a propensity to pay, those who have those pain points. If they are schools, then upset parents. If they are healthcare organizations, it's really horrible during the pandemic that healthcare organizations and banks are the two key industries which are being attacked. And so, I think ransomware right now, I think even, from what I've seen from the beginning of the year, I think we see that there's been what seems to be a slowdown, certainly in publicly reported attacks. But I think a lot of that is just that they're waiting in reconnaissance. Many of them may realize in the economic straits we're in that those victims may not be in any position to pay. But yeah, so it's certainly evolving. It's becoming more problematic, and it certainly is spreading.
Great. Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions, but if any others come through, we'll send them your way.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, again.
And thank you, Michael. Thanks, Terry. We really appreciate Armor Security being a sponsor and vendor for us this month. We learned a lot about the dark web. I think I learned more about drugs and drug trafficking than I've ever known in my life. I'll have to find a way to purge that, but the rest of the content, thank you so much, Michael. So with that, I want to make sure that I announce that our next meeting will be on June 18th, the third Thursday of the month, as is traditional, and that will be another virtual event, barring any changes. If any changes come about, we will definitely communicate that to you, and the sponsor there will be Range Force. All right. So with that, I want to thank all of the members. Be on the lookout for several things. One would be a reminder for the speaker directory email for volunteers. We know that our members are very knowledgeable and experienced. I've had conversations with many of you and looking forward to even more conversations from the automotive, IoT, traditional infrastructure, cloud sectors, utilities, you name it. We cover the gamut. So I want to make sure that we give you an opportunity to speak, so please respond to those and empower our youth and our college young professionals. The other would be for the winners of the Armor drawing and the winner of the North Texas drawing. Those emails will be going out to the winners as well. With that, I think we can conclude our meeting. Sean, I'll hand it over to you if we're going to open it up for networking.
Sure. So there were a few opportunities that were posted in Q&A, and I've replied to those, so you can probably see them in the answered question section, the Q&A option that should be at the very bottom of the Zoom screen. I'm going to thumb through these questions real quick just to call some of these out. One of them is Raytheon has 329 job openings across the country, and McKinney and Richardson have large offices, and they may be among those hiring. So you could check that out online. Good to know. Another one, Clay Ramsey, a member, mentioned that his company, HMS, has an opening for a business continuity disaster recovery analyst. And if you're interested, you can contact Clay. He provided this email in the question, which is clay.ramsey@hms.com. It's the only two that I see that were shared, although another great way to stay involved and to share those kinds of opportunities, of course, is our LinkedIn. So if you are not part of our LinkedIn group, please do. We encourage you to join that and post either whether you're looking or you have opportunities that you know of you'd like to share. It'd be a great way to follow up after this.
All right. So with that, thank you very much, Sean. Thank you again, Terry and Michael. Thanks to all of the attendees and participants. We really appreciate you, and stay safe. And we look forward to seeing you in June.